Hello, my name is Dana Rushton. I'm a carpentry apprenticeship instructor here at the Center for the Built Environment at the Nova Scotia Community College, the Waterfront campus. I'd like to take a few minutes today to show you how to use the National Occupational Analysis as an effective tool in your preparation for the Interprovincial Red Seal Carpentry exam. A copy of this analysis can be found at the following link. If we look to Appendix E, we'll see a pie chart here, broke up into 6 sections from A into F. A was common occupational skills at 20%. B, it shows concrete at 20%. C, framing at 22%. Block D for exterior finish at 14%. Block E, interior finish at 15%. And Block F for renovations at 9%. Essentially, what this relates to in the National Occupational Analysis is what they intend a carpenter to know to be a Red Seal certified. So we break the trade up into these 6 sections, and they say that the majority of the information that one needs to know comes from framing at 22%, 20% at concrete, and so forth. If we relate this to the Interprovincial Red Seal exam with 100 questions, well, we can determine that on framing there's going to be 22 questions, on concrete 20 questions, also for occupational or common occupational skills another 20 questions, and so forth. So this is a very effective for using as a study guide of what the questions and what sections the questions will actually come from. Let's move ahead now and look in Block A. Common occupational skills. And as we mentioned before, there's going to be 20 questions come from this section under Block A. So let's go down and look at Task 1, uses tools and equipment. Now we'll slip ahead here to K17 under required knowledge. Under K17, we'll see this as knowledge of types of rigging and hoisting equipment. K18, knowledge of components of rigging and hoisting equipment. K19, knowledge of hand signals for rigging and hoisting. Now we're going to take notice of how many times we're going to see references made to rigging and hoisting and hand signals. So we see it mentioned 3 times right here. Let's look down to where it says subtask, right at the bottom of the same page. A.101 uses hand tools. I just want to explain this reference here. It says NL yes, NS yes, PE yes. That means Newfoundland, this using hand tools is part of the Newfoundland Interprovincial exam, as it is in Nova Scotia, and as it is PE is Prince Edward Island. Let's just jump ahead here to A1.08, so I can show you a bit of a difference here. Under subtask A-1.08, it says uses tack welding equipment, not common core. And we look under Newfoundland, it says yes. Under Nova Scotia, it says no. That means that this body of knowledge using tack welding equipment is not part of a Red Seal exam in Nova Scotia. It's not something that we accept as part of the carpentry trade. So for here, it says no. So that's a piece of knowledge you don't need to know. And you'll find that mentioned not a lot throughout the occupational analysis, but there'll be a couple sections where you'll see NS no. So just watch for that so you don't study any material you don't have to. Now let's move along to Task 2. Task 2. Uses building material, and right at the beginning, related components including but not limited to. Let's skip down to where it says others. It says foundation coatings, drainage systems, frost protection, insect protection, and it mentions here grouts, non-shrink and hydraulic, tarps, and grouting additives. Well, there we're seeing grouting mentioned a couple times. This has been a stumbling block for people in the past that have written the IP. But you notice here that grouts mentioned a couple times. We'll watch for that again as we move along through our exploration here in this document. Now, let's go to A2.02.04, and this is under handles material. A2.02 handles materials, and we go down to A2.02.04 handle hazardous materials using PPE and according to the WMIS. So we see a reference here made to WMIS. Now let's move ahead a little further now. On to task 3. Interprets documentation. And we look right at the beginning under related components. National Building Code and Reference Standards, blueprints, specifications, health and safety regulations, and again it says WMIS documentation. So we see it mentioned again, as we do also on the same page under K7. Knowledge of safety documentation such as MSDS, WMIS symbols, and safety manuals. We'll tell you right there, you're going to need to know the WMIS symbols. It's spelled right out there for you. So if you don't know them, you need to know them. So as you can see, it's starting to show you some areas that maybe you need to brush up on if you don't already know it. Let's look ahead a little further now to task 4. Task 4 organizes work. And we slip down to K10, knowledge of tagout and lockout procedures. Just a hint there that you should know about lockout and tagout if you don't. It's giving you a good indicator that's a piece of subject matter that could be on the exam. Let's look ahead a little further. Under subtask A4.02, communication with others. And we'll slip down to A4.02.07. Uses recognized hand signals to communicate with crane operators. Look, we see that again about rigging and crane operators, the hand signals. We'll slip over now to subtask A4.04, maintain safe work environment, and go down to A4.04.07. Apply WMIS procedures such as record keeping, MSDS, product identification, handling, and disposal. Now, we've seen WMIS mentioned 2 or 3 times, maybe more. So it's a pretty good indicator that, yes, there's going to be probably more than one question on WMIS. Now, we'll slip over a few more pages to task 6. And in task 6, it talks about builds and uses temporary access structures. Now, this is where you start to see that perhaps you may not be familiar with some of the terms or some of the items, especially if you haven't worked in that sector of the industry. It talks about wood scaffolds. It talks about bleachers and system scaffolds, staging, frame scaffolds, tube and clamp scaffolds, ladders, ramps, temporary staging, pump jack scaffolds, suspended access systems such as swing stage, wall brackets, roof brackets, form brackets, and tagging systems. There's tagging systems for staging, which you will need to know. We do provide some of that information in some of the resource documents we have in a glossary that we provide. So if you don't know about tube and clamp scaffolds and bleachers, this is probably giving you a good indicator that you need to brush up in those areas. Let's move ahead now to Block B, 20 questions on concrete. So we'll move ahead to Task 7. Constructs formwork. Task 7 constructs formwork. We'll jump over to K29, knowledge of grouting and epoxies. Here we see it mentioned again. I mentioned before that we've seen epoxies and grouting. And we go down to K31 again, knowledge of rigging equipment. So there we're seeing rigging again. Let's look down a little further to a subtask B 7.01. 7.0104, fasten excavation shoring, firmly in place using fasteners such as rock anchors, bolts, and pilings. Again, giving you some hints of some terms that you should need to know. Subtask 7.02, erects concrete shoring. Now we're starting to see shoring mentioned here a few times actually. We'll probably see it a few more as we go along. All right, let's move ahead here now to 7.07.06. And it talks about installing access scaffold to facilitate concrete placement. Another reference to scaffolding. So you know there's going to be a few questions on scaffolding, as it's mentioned throughout the document. Let's go ahead now to B7.09, installs embedded steel. This has caught a few apprentices off guard before on exams. 7.09.05, tie reinforcing steel to ensure continuity using types of ties, such as saddle, crosslap, and figure 8. So that's telling you that there's a few rebar wire tie knots that you need to know for the IP exam. And they're actually spelled right out there for you. So if you don't know what they are, it's a pretty good idea that you probably should find out before your actual exam date. Let's slip down to B710.03, which is under the dismantles and maintains formwork section. It says install reshoring according to drawings and specifications. So there's a mentioning of shoring again. And B710.04, rig, hoist, and move fly forms for relocation. Another reference made to that crane operation of rigging and hand signals. Let's head over to Task 8 now. Installs concrete, cement-based, and epoxy products. We'll go down to K12, knowledge of crane hand signals and rigging points. We're seeing that over and over and over again. K17, knowledge of types of grout, such as dry pack, expanding, and liquid grout. There we see grout mentioned again. And K18, knowledge of types of grouting procedures. So there's a pretty good indication there that there's going to be some grouting questions on the exam. All right, actually, if we go over to subtask B.8.05, there's actually a section there all into itself, just on installing grout. So we can see that it's very important too.